So here we are, another week, having some coffee, and we're chatting it up with another episode of Over 50. I wanted to share a story with you that's very personal to me, and it has to do with my rise to empowerment and the obstacles that I faced along the way. And I thought it was important to share this because it also has a lot to do with how we treat each other as human beings and also as women. And so this is really going to be focused on women's empowerment and kind of how I experienced things in the workforce when I had an earth job. I want to talk to you guys about what I experienced when I had my earth job out in the world. And, I was raised in a family. A lot of that time I was a single mom. And so I really had to climb that ladder because I had a mission, which was I had to make enough money to take care of my family. And at the same time, I think when you're my age, you know a lot. And we always say, God, I wish I knew so many things. If you could just plop into these positions or certain parts of your life and already understand, how to do things or understand the wisdom of certain things or understanding the things that you need to be cautious of. Because we were naive about a lot of things as we're younger. God, it would be so great if we could just start off with all that knowledge, but it's not how it works, right? But one of the things that I saw throughout my career, in management and operations, kind of struck me over and over again. And I have two polar opposite experiences. And I want to end with 7 steps on how to support women. And so this video is really about sharing my story of what I encountered when I was out in the world, how my obstacles came from unlikely and unexpected places, how I kind of inculcated and took all that in, how it made me feel as a woman, and then offering to you as a woman or anyone who wants to support women how to do that and how to really think about certain things perhaps that you haven't thought about before that will shape the way in which you can support other women. This is really important to me because I encountered a lot of obstacles, and I was very surprised and hurt by some of the obstacles that I faced and by the people that I encountered these obstacles by. So I want to share my story about that. So when I was younger, no one knows exactly how to be a leader, right? So when you start rising in the ranks in your job, some people are kind of natural born leaders, and I think that I would fall into that category. I also have a very good heart. I'm very humble. And sometimes leadership roles can really, really shine a light of what's in a person's heart, because a leadership role can really show the intention of another human being and what they're really about. So people can give lip service and say they're humble and they're going to be good people, but really it's all about the actions that people take when they're in those roles, and so this is really important. And a lot of times, and I've experienced this by witnessing it, that people would get into these power leadership roles and they would become these monsters because for the first time in their life, they realize the power they have over other people. And when people use that power to harm another individual or to make them feel scared or threatened, any of those things, that really shows the intention of the other person is to feel a sense of power. The overall drive is to feel powerful, and they can do that by lording it over other people. Whereas someone who has more of I want to help and be of service to other people. I want to right the wrongs with this power. I want to empower other individuals with my power afforded to me. I want to open doors for other people that have been closed, right? And so for me, I always felt that way. I didn't want to be a hoarder of information, because that's another way that people lord power over other people, is by hoarding information. And you might see this even in your own business world. You may have experienced this, where people don't want to share the how to. They just want to tell people what to do, because they feel that by sharing the information will take away their power. Because, as we do know, right, this is why people have kept books away from people. This is why people in past history were not allowed to read. They weren't allowed to write, because there's a power in that. Because with that ability to read and write comes power, right? So if we can withhold information from other people, that's a sense of a person being able to hold power over other people. I never liked that. And there are people that don't even realize that they're doing that. They get into these power positions, and then they hold on to the knowledge because they need to feel that their position is not threatened, right? So just wanted to give you that, because I wanted you to understand that I understand the difference between those things, and I always have. And my intention when I got into business was always to open doors for people that had them shut. For whatever reasons, people were not given the ability to make decisions, or they were, other people were lording over them instead of, building them up and letting them bloom into what they're really good at. I always wanted to focus on that aspect of it. So when I would come into a position, I would always look at the big picture and figure out where they're not being empowered, and give them that empowerment and see what they do with it, right? Because you have a lot of people that could be influenced to be great leaders if given half the chance. So that has always been my mentality of where I come from. And when I was first given, a leadership position, a position of power, I made mistakes, absolutely. I learned how to be more approachable. I learned, that when I'm feeling stress over a situation, that I could get curt, and how to pull that back, how to not become curt in these situations, realizing that you still have to balance how you speak to people. And so, was never perfect, and I had to learn that. But even with this experience, I had a group of people that I empowered. I gave them a voice. We had meetings, and whenever I had these meetings with them, I would say, they could bring to the meeting whatever a perceived problem was, but they were only allowed to do it if they had the seed of a solution. So it couldn't become a complaint session. And if they could not have a seed of the solution because they were truly baffled by it, then they could ask the group, is anyone else experiencing this? And I don't know how to fix it. Does anyone have ideas? And we would do this as a group. And if the group found that there was a collective issue with something, and I saw that the whole group was experiencing this, then this would be something that I would bring to the board members that needed to be changed. So it was a collective empowerment to change something. And then we would have change. They would listen to that, the board members, and then they would approve the change. And then the group would see their voice mattered. And that mattered to me. And I had an amazing experience with these group of individuals who were very supportive. So then, years later, I'm with another company, and I have a group of women. It just worked out that the majority were women. All of these managers who had their own store, it was all women, okay? And so my experience was the same thing. I looked at the expanse of what was going on. I met with each manager, monthly to, just focus on what's their marketing plan, what are they doing this month, what do they need help with, are they struggling with anything that I could jump in, is there anything company wise that they're struggling with not having control over, that I could help get them control over, if it was going to make their job better and easier, right? If it was going to make it more efficient. And the thing that was really shocking and surprising to me is that as I was doing this and as I was getting them power over things that they had not been given before, changing things that they had asked for change to happen in, because it made their job easier, it made things more effective, it gave them more empowerment over their position and what they were doing. And instead of having someone at the corporate office making decisions on hiring people that they had to work for, that should have been something they did. They should have the final say, right? So stuff like that, where I took it out of the hands of, say, HR to do all that, and then just plop somebody into a culture that they, or an environment where the coworkers maybe didn't like their energy, or they didn't work well together. A lot of times you can see that when you interview someone. You have to look at the current culture, the current people that are there, and make sure that energy is a match, right? I knew this from my other experience, and with my other experience that was very successful in leadership, I told all of them that they were part of, my staff was part of the interview process. So if we were thinking of hiring somebody, I told them all, we have an interview coming in here, on such and such date. This person, the minute they come in, the interview starts, but they don't know that because you guys are part of the process. So I want you guys to be paying attention to what you see, what you feel, what your feelings are, whether you like the person immediately or there's some concerns immediately. And I want you to understand the importance of your part, because whatever you say to me can make or break whether or not this person gets the job. So there is a hefty responsibility in being careful with what you say. Don't make quick judgments, that are unfair, but really think about how you feel. Be honest, because a lot of this stuff comes naturally when you're meeting with somebody. But I want you to understand that your role in anything that you say to me could make or break whether or not this person gets the job. So whatever you say, really give some thought to it before you bring it to my attention. Once I do the interview, I'm going to ask you all what you thought and if you had anything to say, and whether or not you liked this person. And so I understood early on that bringing people in and giving people that they were going to work with, giving them the empowerment, looking at the energy of the group, right? And making sure that that's a match, and giving them empowerment over that. And so there's things like that I was able to influence, the corporate end of it, with why it was important to let that happen, and then negotiate the terms with the corporation about the empowerment that we could give to them and why it was necessary. And sometimes it was just, okay, great, let them do it, and then you make the final say. Other times it was, okay, we'll let them do this, but I want to also be, what it ended up being was, okay, they can interview, and then you talk to the manager and make sure that you understand why they chose the choice they did, and the HR, I think, wanted to do the final interview. But they allowed the managers to have that power that they once did not have. So I made a lot of changes, and change is hard for a lot of people. But they were part of the changes, and I was giving them the empowerment to be part of the changes that were going to be better for them. So you can imagine how surprised I was when I found this group of women who were very close-knit, to not be supporting me. And in fact, they were actually trying to get me fired, which was, they were literally trying to make my job miserable. They were, smiling in my face, and then, going to HR and saying other things, or trying to pollute their staff, and really did everything that they could to tear me down, make me uncomfortable, when I had to lead like dinners, we had dinners that we did, they were just always doing things that were making me feel like an outsider. And then always, if anyone has ever felt outside of a group, you know what that feels like. You're coming in and you're doing all these things to help people, and you feel like you're going to get support from them because you're making their world better. And then you find out that they're on the back end literally getting together to see how they could destroy you. And that was one of the things I found out, that they had gotten together to talk about how they could get rid of me. And I was so baffled by that, because in my presence, they were like in partnership with me. They were excited. They were, yeah, that's so great. They were so grateful that they were getting these new freedoms. They were getting these new controls that they hadn't had. And then on the back end, I'm being notified by, my bosses, what these people are really doing. And they saw through this, but it baffled me, because I just couldn't understand how people would be friendly to your face. And you are doing all these things that are measurable. They're metrics, right? Like, I'm big into metrics. Like, these are measurable differences that impact their world, their control, their empowerment, their leadership for the better. And yet they collectively made a decision that they were going to try and destroy me. And that was really odd to me. And I to this day, I can't even understand it, and I'm one that always looks at myself, right? Everything is like, what could I do? Am I out of line? Am I doing anything that's, and the only thing that I really could come up with was there were changes that were made. There was more oversight, because in order for me to be able to help them get the power, I had to know them and I had to understand what they needed. And that meant we had to meet once a month. And that was one of the things they never had any oversight. So I think that in itself was the crux of the beginnings of it. There were so many positives on the other end that you would have thought that they would have been supportive to me, because I was getting them freedoms, empowerments, control over their position that they never had before. They were being seen as more legitimate in their positions because they were getting these controls and these empowerments. And instead of being supportive to me, they rose up and tried to tear me down. And in a way, I'm like a babe to badness that way, right? Because I take people at face value. And I do that, I guess, until there's a reason for me not to. This is the big point that I want to make in this training, is that women are really overcoming and have overcome a lot of things. We have continually throughout history been suppressed, been told what we can't do, have been forced into positions and things that, living situations that women felt trapped for a very long time in a lot of different ways, and stuck in these positions where men were in control of everything. And so women just felt like they had to take the sexual harassment and the perception that they couldn't do certain things because they weren't men, and all of this stuff. And here I am coming in and in a power position and wanting to open doors for other people, only to find that the people I'm trying to open doors for, that are women, were the very ones who were trying to take me down. What I want to say to you is I want this to be 7 steps to supporting women. And I want to give you some things to think about, to make sure that you're doing all that you can, if it's in your heart, to be supportive to women. Whether you're a man listening or a woman listening, listen to the 7 steps of supporting women, and really look at whether or not you're doing those things, to see whether or not you you can do those things to be more supportive to the women that are trying to rise up in this world. Things have been imbalanced for too long, and especially women need to be supporting other women and not listening to just what other people say about other women when you come into a situation. And I'll give you an example of this, is that when I first took this position that I'm talking about, I was going to work in a company with a woman who was like the global marketing person for a very big company. I'm not going to say who it is. This was an extremely powerful position, and she was going to be the person I was working with. And when I first came in, my company, the men, 3 men in particular, who had very high positions, said, "Oh, have you met so-and-so yet?" A woman. And I said, "No, I haven't. Why?" And they said, "Oh, well, they kind of made all these things like, well, she's hard to please. She's this, she's that. She's nice, but she's kind of like Queen of Hearts, off with your head." It seems like everybody's giving me kind of these warning signs. So that was what I was being fed before I ever met her, from 3 men who were telling me all these things about her. All these negative things they were telling me, and they had no second thoughts about telling me all these things. Thankfully for me, I don't ever listen to other people's opinions of other people, because they have motives most of the time. And so I want to share with you 7 steps they're simple steps that you can use to really think about whether or not what you're offering to people, how you are with other women in power. Think about the women that you might be around that are in leadership roles. And this doesn't mean necessarily leadership in companies where, they're leaderships. This could be people that are leaders in your home, people that that take care of a lot of things. How can you support them? So I want you to really look with a magnifying glass in your own life, and what women you are around that are doing a lot of things to better the lives of others, and what you can do, or even just getting in power positions, because that is going to give other women a voice where it has previously been vacant of a woman's point of view. Okay, so here are the 7 steps. 1, what woman in your life right now bugs you? Think about that. 2, analyze why. What is it that is causing that person to bug you? Is it something that you see in yourself, a shadow of maybe who you used to be, or a shadow of something you don't like within yourself that you see in the other person? Or is it just something that you don't particularly care for in that person? That's okay, because sometimes energies don't match. 3, ask yourself if you have unfairly accepted what others have said about her. Now remember what I told you. When I first came into the company and took this position, and I was going to have to work with this global person that was a female, 3 VPs all warned me about her, all said something negative to me, implanting a seed of negativity about her leadership, and that she wasn't a good leader because she was a woman. They didn't give any reasons why. They just implied it for whatever reason. 4, ask yourself what unfair disadvantage she deals with daily, and if her behavior could be armor. As I stated earlier, a lot of times women have to work even harder, because we have people like that when you come into a company who are immediately telling everybody else how they're not a good leader. Now, this isn't every situation, and this is not every culture. There are a lot of companies that support women in power, And this is changing every day, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some deep-seated belief systems where it comes out in the things that people say. So again, these people didn't even realize what they were doing when they were feeding me all these negative interpretations of the person I hadn't even met yet. Now, you could then take that in and then immediately meet that person with an unfair view of her, because she has not even met you yet, and you have not even given her a chance to show you who she is through her actions and her deeds as a leader. That's not fair to do to anybody, and that's why I say make your own judgments yourself. 5, ask yourself what her strength is and what you respect in her. Instead of focusing on the negatives, which all those girls did, they took whatever negative thing, they had maybe one, I could see one negative thing that they wouldn't have liked, which is oversight, because they never had any oversight before, and all of a sudden they have oversight now. And I could see how someone would not like that. If they were free to do whatever they wanted, I could see how someone wouldn't like that. But instead of focusing on what they could support that I was doing, they focused on one thing. And this happens a lot in our psyche, right? We may have, for instance, 1,000 good reviews out there, but we focus on the one bad review, and then we start spiraling, and we spend 90% of our time thinking about that one bad review instead of 90% of our time on the 1,000 good reviews and 10% of the time on the negative one. You see what I'm saying? These group of women spent all their time focusing on the oversight that they didn't like, instead of all the empowerment and all the other freedoms and power and control and the building up and giving them everything they were asking for that they needed to make their life better and make their staff's lives better. Instead of focusing on all those good things, they chose to focus 90% of their time on 10% of what they didn't like about their job. And that's crucial, because that's going to be the world and the reality you live in if you're going to keep thinking that way. So instead of focusing on the negative, ask yourself, how can I support her? 6, ask yourself and her, how can I support you? Be the one that you let her know, I'm a link in your chain. I am here to support you, Girl power. Be an ally. Ask her, literally ask yourself, what can I do in my job that interacts with her in some way? What can I do to support her? She's a woman in power and I want to support her. You can be thinking this and then doing it. And maybe it's just being easy to be around. Maybe it's being friendly. Maybe it's smiling at her when she comes in. Maybe it's greeting her with, being very welcoming. Sometimes people in power, they come in and they have a job to do, and everybody's cowering and doesn't want to be around that. Maybe you could be the smiling face, that makes her feel comfortable when she has to come in and do her job. And then asking her, what can I do to support you? Clear as day, what can I do to support you? Girl power, I want to support you as much as I can. And letting her know that you're going to be a source of support for her. And I can't tell you how that would have meant a lot to me. If one of those women would have come up to me and said, how can I support you? Oh my God, I would have felt like, that's amazing. Thank you so much. People who are a boss or in leadership, they don't go around and telling everybody all the stresses. That's part of being the boss, is you learn a lot and you're dealing with a lot, but you're not sharing that with everybody. Only the upper management knows all the problems you're dealing with. The staff doesn't know that, and so assume that the person you're working with has a lot of stress on their plate. Someone in leadership is going to have a lot of stressors you have no clue about, because they don't tell you that. That's part of the job. That is an amazing thing that you could do to help a woman in power. God, I wish somebody would have done that with me. It would have been amazing. Apply the 7 steps and see what you can do to be of support, and literally tell people. And you can do this with men too, right? These steps can be applied to men and women. In this video, of course, we're specifically talking about how to support women and how to be a powerful woman. And that being a powerful woman means supporting powerful women, helping them rise to powerful positions, helping them rise to powerful positions. I'm going to end on that note. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This has been this week's episode, 7 steps of how to support women in powerful positions. I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Share this with someone that you love. Share this with someone over 50 or at any age who you think needs to hear this message. With age comes wisdom, hopefully. This is some of the wisdom I wanted to share with you from all my historical references of being in powerful positions, rising to the ranks of powerful positions, and the support and the obstacles that I endured along the way. And just wanted to share with you my observation of how to support other women in powerful positions so that we could have this girl power moment. We can help other women be a voice in the room. If you're new here, every Wednesday, I put out a new over 50 video. And don't forget, be your divine self at any age.